Couple of pets as well.
Yeah.
A dog and a cat with interesting names, to say the least.
Yeah. That's Oprah.
That's Oprah.
Oprah is a human being. She bleeds, she breathes, and one day she'll expire. And if you feel like there's something you need to say to anyone, I feel like you should say it.
When it comes to Oprah and Monique's falling out, it's actually more complicated than it seems. We discovered that it's deeply personal. So both Oprah and Monique grew up in very abusive households. Monique had always looked up to Oprah ever since she was young.
I'm a little black fat girl from Baltimore, Maryland, and I saw this fat black woman on a TV show. We took a field trip to that studio, and I hugged that woman. And I said, when I grow up, Miss Winfrey, I want to do what you do. And she said, you know, you gotta work really hard.
Be able to make out with Oprah, to have love scenes with her and those tiggo bitties. I mean, she's such a lovely, voluptuous woman. So being able to, she's very, very, very beautiful, and that was wonderful. That was wonderful.
Oprah Winfrey's name has been moving through the internet in a way that feels familiar, but also different this time. And honestly, when you see the same name pop up again and again like this, you kind of stop and ask yourself why now. It usually starts quietly. A post here, a comment there, people hinting that something about the all-girls school she opened in South Africa doesn't sit right with them. Not outright accusations, just suggestions. And that kind of vague language is exactly what makes people lean in instead of scrolling past. Here's what actually happened. Back in 2007, the school faced a real scandal when a dorm matron named Virginia McGobo got arrested on multiple serious charges involving inappropriate behavior with students. This wasn't a rumor, it was documented. Oprah immediately flew to South Africa, hired private investigators, apologized publicly to the families, and promised to fix the problems.
These are my girls. These are my girls.
The matron was convicted and sentenced to prison. That's the verified story. But then the internet took it further, way further. According to what's been circulating online, there are claims that students went missing, that serious allegations were raised beyond the documented misconduct case, and that the truth was never fully explained. Some conspiracy theories even mention mass graves and hundreds of missing children, though fact checkers like AAP Fact Check debunked those specific claims as completely false in 2025. There's also a 2011 incident involving a student and a tragic situation that was unrelated to institutional wrongdoing. And in 2009-7, students were expelled or suspended for breaking school rules, which some people tried to connect to darker narratives, even though it was standard disciplinary action. None of this additional conspiracy material is laid out cleanly. No clear timelines connecting the dots. No solid sourcing beyond screenshots and speculation. Just emotional framing. And when stories are told like that, they tend to grow legs on their own, then almost automatically the conversation jumps. Because every time Oprah's name trends like this, 50 Cent gets pulled into it. And that part doesn't surprise me at all. Their history has been sitting there for years, just waiting to be reused whenever the internet needs a familiar villain and gatekeeper storyline. Suddenly, this isn't just about a school anymore. It becomes about power in Hollywood, about who stays on top, about who gets pushed aside. Online posts start saying Oprah exposed herself, that she's worse than other figures currently under fire, that she stayed at the top by quietly sidelining black actors and artists. These are heavy claims. And it's important to pause there because heavy claims don't automatically mean solid claims. What's really happening here feels less like new information and more like old resentment finding a new outlet. To understand why 50 Cent keeps coming up, you have to go back to the moment their paths first crossed. When 50 Cent was rising fast, he wasn't just chasing chart success, he wanted legitimacy. And back then, sitting down with Oprah symbolized something bigger than music. It meant crossing into a space that decided who was acceptable to mainstream America. 50 wanted that interview not to erase where he came from, but to reframe it. From a former street figure out of Jamaica, Queens, to a serious artist and businessman. According to how he later told the story, the pitch went nowhere. Oprah wasn't interested. And that kind of rejection hits differently when it comes from someone seen as the ultimate cultural gatekeeper. She didn't connect with his music, she didn't connect with his image, and for 50, that didn't feel neutral. It felt judgmental. So he reacted publicly the way he usually does. He criticized her audience. He suggested her platform was disconnected from hip-hop culture. He made comments that were sharp enough to stick, and people are still quoting them today for a reason. Ludacris later spoke about his own experience on Oprah's show, saying he felt uncomfortable with how the conversation was framed, that his perspective felt secondary to criticism of his lyrics and image. Whether intentional or not, moments like that fed into a bigger conversation, one that honestly never really went away. So when Oprah's name starts trending again today, tied to vague allegations and recycled suspicions, it doesn't happen in isolation. Old interviews get reposted, old quotes resurface, old frustrations come back dressed as new revelation. Ludacris had his own moment on Oprah's show that still gets talked about years later. He appeared alongside the rest of the cast of Crash, doing what every actor does on a press run, promoting a movie. That was the expectation. Talk about the film, the role, the message. Simple. But the conversation didn't stay there. Instead of focusing on the movie, Oprah shifted the attention toward his music, pressing him about his use of certain language in his lyrics. And this is where things started to feel off. Because that wasn't why he was there. He wasn't sitting on that couch as a rapper. He was there as part of a cast representing a film. Ludacris later said that Oprah openly told him she didn't agree with his music, even while praising his performance in the movie. On its own, that might sound harmless. People are allowed to disagree with art, but context matters. Timing matters. From his point of view, the interview turned into something else. He claimed that parts of his explanation were edited out, leaving responses that made him appear less articulate than he actually was.
Able to say what she said, and then I had my rebuttal, and when I saw the final show, her comments were in there.
Right, was in there, but yours wasn't in there.
And mine weren't in there, so it just looked like I kind of took it.
Wow.
Like it was just quiet.
And whether that was intentional or not, the effect was real. Once that version of you goes out to millions of viewers, it sticks. That's why this moment still comes up. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it felt defining. And then there was Dave Chappelle. His appearance came after he walked away from a massive Comedy Central deal and disappeared from the spotlight. At the time, the public didn't know what to make of it. The story was already being written for him before he ever sat down.
When Dave tried to explain his decision on Oprah's show, the conversation kept circling back to how he was perceived, not what he was actually saying. At one point, the framing shifted toward questioning his mental state, and that's a powerful shift because once that idea is introduced, it colors everything else. Dave pushed back. He made it clear he wasn't confused or unstable, he had made a choice. But moments like that show how easily a narrative can be steered when one side controls the question.
That you had become increasingly paranoid. Would you say you were paranoid?
Sure. First of all, what is a black man without his paranoia intact? You might win $100 in a poker game and be on the subway. You're gonna look over your shoulder. They just said in everything I had $50 million. That's like making me a marked man.
So did you go to a psychiatric hospital?
In South Africa?
Yeah.
Who? It's me. I'm insane. They were trying to get me to take psychotic medication.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not taking this medicine, man, because I know these people be trying to control you or maybe discredit you. I was afraid, like, you know.
But you were stressed out. That's why.
There's no question. But it's very stressful for someone to constantly walk behind you.
So when people today talk about Oprah putting guests in uncomfortable positions, they're not pointing to secret plots. They're pointing to moments like these. Public, visible, and hard to forget. When you line them up, they don't feel random, they feel like friction, and that friction never really went away. And then you have Taraji P, Henson, and Monique, two different careers, two different moments in time, but somehow the same pattern keeps showing up. When Taraji's name started trending, a lot of people immediately brought up Monique. Not because they wanted to drag Taraji into old drama, but because the situations felt uncomfortably familiar. In 2023, Taraji set the internet on fire after speaking openly about being underpaid for the color purple. And what really caught people's attention wasn't just the money, it was the exhaustion behind her voice. She wasn't angry for clicks, she sounded tired, burned out, like someone who had been carrying the same frustration for years and finally couldn't hold it in anymore.
I'm just tired of working so hard, being gracious at what I do, getting paid a fraction of the cost. I'm tired of hearing my sisters say the same thing over and over. You get tired. I hear people go, you work a lot. Well, have to. The math ain't mathing. Tired of hearing that my entire career, 20 plus years in the game, and I hear the same thing, and I see what you do for another production, and when it's time for us to go to bed, you don't have any money. They play in your face. And I'm just supposed to smile and grin and bear it and just keep, like, enough is enough.
Not long after that, Taraji appeared in another interview, this time with Gayle King, and honestly, watching that conversation was uncomfortable. Taraji was clearly struggling, talking about how close she felt to walking away from acting altogether. It felt raw, vulnerable, and instead of being met with understanding, the tone shifted in a way that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. There were moments where her pain seemed to get brushed off, even lightly joked about. And this isn't a viral clip moment, this is someone unraveling in real time. Whether intentional or not, it came across as dismissive. Now, people didn't miss the connection. Gayle King isn't just another interviewer, she's Oprah's closest ally. And once you realize that, the dynamic starts to feel less neutral. There was no scenario where that conversation was going to turn into a full-on critique of Oprah's role in Taraji's situation. That door was never going to open. As all of this was unfolding, 50 Cent did what he always does. He jumped straight into the chaos. He reposted an article about Taraji's situation and made it clear where he stood. He openly supported her, saying the industry had dropped the ball and that he was ready to work with her. No subtlety, no careful phrasing, just a public show of backing her when she clearly needed it. But here's the part Taraji may not have fully realized at the time. She was stepping into a fight that had already been fought before, because years earlier, Monique had been ringing the same alarm bells. And social media knows her story by heart at this point. Monique has long claimed that she was effectively shut out of the industry after refusing to play, along with certain expectations following Precious. She said she was paid a relatively small amount for the film and was still expected to fund her own travel and promotion. When she pushed back, she says the consequences were immediate and lasting.
I began to see commercials with my brother, my mother, my father, and my other brother. Now, the reason why that means so much is because in the conversation we had about my brother, we then went deeper and we began to talk about our relationships with our mothers and our fathers. She never said my mother was coming on that show, because had Oprah Winfrey said, "I'm gonna have your mother," I would have said, "Shut it down."
For years, she publicly called out Oprah and Tyler Perry, saying they turned their backs on her instead of protecting her. And whether people agreed with her delivery or not, the core of her complaint never changed. What's interesting is who stood by her when almost no one else would: 50 Cent. While most people treated Monique like a problem to avoid, he openly praised her talent, went to her shows, and publicly called for her return. He posted support, he hyped her up, he even demanded public apologies on her behalf, saying he was ready to help bring her back into the spotlight.
And when you line all of this up, Monique, Taraji, 50 Cent stepping in, it starts to feel less like isolated drama and more like a warning system that keeps getting ignored. Different names, same tension. Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry surely understand how this looks from the outside. Because when someone's career stays stalled for this long, and the same powerful names keep coming up in the conversation, people are gonna talk. That's just reality. From where things stand, this situation with Monique should have been resolved years ago. An acknowledgement, a conversation, something. Letting it drag on only made it louder, messier, and harder to ignore. And when 50 Cent stepped in publicly, it didn't feel random. It felt like someone finally saying out loud what a lot of people had been whispering. What stood out wasn't just his support, it was how direct he was. No dancing around it, no industry language, just a blunt message. This has gone on long enough and it doesn't need to keep going. But then the conversation widened, and this is where things get uncomfortable. Because 50 didn't just talk about Monique, he started pointing at old Hollywood connections that people have side-eyed for years, especially Oprah's past proximity to Harvey Weinstein. Back then, their closeness wasn't hidden. Same events, same spaces, same industry circle. They moved in parallel for a long time. When everything about Weinstein came crashing down, Oprah said she had no idea what was happening. And look, being in the same orbit doesn't automatically mean you know everything. Hollywood runs on separation and silence. Still, if we're being honest, some people found that hard to fully accept. Not because there's proof of anything, but because of how often powerful people later say they didn't know even when the environment around them was full of rumors. That doesn't make someone guilty, but it does make people question how awareness works at that level of power. Then there's the school in South Africa again. When Oprah launched it, the school was framed as something hopeful, a chance to change lives through education. And when that serious misconduct scandal surfaced in 2007, she stepped in personally, apologized publicly, and promised change. The person responsible was prosecuted and convicted. On paper, that sounds like accountability. But here's where trust becomes complicated. Because for some people, those actions felt sincere. For others, they felt more like damage control. And when time passed and internet conspiracy theories didn't disappear, the story didn't fade. It hardened into something bigger than the facts. That's the common thread tying all of this together. Not secret evidence, not hidden files, but perception. When the same names keep appearing in stories about influence, protection, and silence, people start connecting dots, even if those dots aren't always fair or complete. And once that perception sets in, it becomes almost impossible to undo. So when 50 Cent brings these topics back into the spotlight, he's not inventing new accusations. He's reopening questions that were never fully answered. Questions about who gets accountability, who gets grace, and who gets quietly left behind. To me, this isn't about proving one massive conspiracy. It's about understanding why so many separate moments keep pointing in the same direction, and whether that direction reflects truth, bias, or unresolved tension. That's exactly why people can't stop talking about it.
This is usually the moment when online conversations stop being careful and start getting loud. And honestly, that's why it's worth slowing down for a second. Oprah's school in South Africa has been discussed, criticized, and re-examined for years. Some of those conversations came from real incidents like the 2007 misconduct case that were addressed publicly at the time. Others grew out of confusion, half-remembered headlines, or people filling in blanks that were never clearly explained. Once that happens, facts and assumptions start blending together, especially online. What keeps showing up is how quickly uncertainty turns into certainty on social media. A question becomes a claim, a rumor becomes a conclusion, and before anyone checks what's actually been reported, the story has already taken on a life of its own. That's where things get tricky. Because asking questions isn't wrong, holding powerful institutions accountable isn't wrong either. But when there's no verified information backing a claim, repeating it doesn't protect anyone. It just creates noise. And noise doesn't help real people, especially when students, families, and communities are involved. Now, when 50 Cent talks about Oprah, he's not trying to play detective, he's reacting to something broader. Years of tension, old frustrations, a long-running belief that certain people are protected by the system while others are quietly pushed aside. Whether you agree with him or not, that perspective didn't come out of nowhere. But here's the part that matters. There's a difference between saying something feels off, let's look closer, and saying I know exactly what happened, without proof. Once that line gets crossed, the conversation stops being productive and starts being reckless. From the inside, all of this probably looks exaggerated. From the outside, though, it looks like unresolved stories colliding with an internet that thrives on extremes. And when those two meet, nuance is usually the first thing to disappear. So maybe the real question isn't whether every rumor is true or false. Maybe it's whether we're willing to separate what's documented from what's assumed. Whether we can talk about power and accountability without turning speculation into fact. And whether we can admit that not every uncomfortable story has a clean ending. That's how things look from here. Now, what do you think? When 50 Cent speaks on Oprah, do you hear accountability, personal resentment, or something in between? And at what point do questions stop being fair and start becoming harmful? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, keep it respectful, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next, and click the next video on your screen if you're ready for another messy industry story.